You're watching This Week in Louisiana Politics with Fred Childers.
Good morning, I'm Fred Childers. Hope you're having a great weekend. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. We have lots to talk about, so let's get started. Following the unprecedented leak of a Supreme Court opinion on Roe v. Wade, Louisianans on both sides of the abortion argument are making their voices heard. Anam Siddiqui caught up with a group at the state capitol. Take a look.
Local pro-choice advocates chant at the steps of the Louisiana Capitol.
Hands off our body!
Their message is clear. They are all in favor of Roe versus Wade.
Black and brown women are going to be disproportionately affected by this decision if it were to happen.
A leaked draft opinion suggests the U.S. Supreme Court could be poised to overturn the federal law allowing abortions. It's an unprecedented leak, and while there is no final word on the case, advocates on both sides wait for what's next.
Quite frankly, it's horrific to think that the right to abortion and Roe versus Wade will be completely overturned.
Well, my initial reaction was a little bit of surprise, shock, maybe confusion, excitement.
Louisiana Right to Life Director Ben Clapper says they are excited by the draft and are waiting to celebrate the official overturn.
If this is the case, we want to make sure that we're taking a step towards protecting every human life and giving every human life a chance.
If Roe v. Wade is overturned, this will impact Louisiana immediately. Louisiana is one of more than a dozen states with trigger laws. This means that if Roe is overturned, Louisiana law would automatically kick in, banning abortion.
And it would also overturn the right to abortion in all of our neighboring states. And it would the result would be that the closest clinic will be in Illinois.
Pro-choice advocates say the issue is bigger than just banning abortions.
Louisiana is a poor state, but we can be a very rich state if we center our women and we center our children. But that does not include controlling their bodies.
And on the heels of that revelation, Louisiana lawmakers advanced a bill that would classify abortion as homicide, and it also looks to go over the Supreme Court's past and future rulings on abortion. Political reporter Shannon Hecht was there as they debated the bill and breaks it down for us.
The bill by Representative Danny McCormick would make abortion illegal in Louisiana despite any decision made by the Supreme Court on Roe v. Wade. It would also classify any kind of abortion or loss of fetus as homicide.
This is a bill to immediately end abortion in the state of Louisiana. No compromises, no more waiting.
The bill would outlaw abortion regardless of any past, present, or future decisions by the Supreme Court. Proponents of the bill say that the legislature can stand up to the court if they don't agree with their stance, but that violates the Supremacy Clause. Louisiana already has trigger laws to ban abortion statewide should Roe v. Wade be overturned. This bill goes so far as to classify a person as the moment an egg is fertilized. Some fear that this could charge women for homicide or battery in cases of miscarriage or infertility treatments like IVF.
This bill would give those cells personhood, such that anything that happens to them after could give rise to criminal prosecution. This criminalizes IVF.
Representative Joe Marino said to take the emotion out of the topic and to consider the legality of what the bill proposes. Some also said that the bill could have repercussions for use of birth control or prevent women from getting life-saving care if it jeopardizes a fetus. The bill passed and now heads to the full House. One representative says that he believes that this bill could potentially be struck down in the courts, but he says that it's still the right of the legislature to be able to vote on it. At the Capitol for your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
Louisiana's attempt to pass what's referred to as Don't Say Gay legislation failed this week after a lengthy committee debate. The bill was picked apart for some vague language. One example, teachers would not be able to cover topics of sexual orientation or gender identity. The bill's author says that was meant to keep teachers from going off topic. Other lawmakers say that is already dictated by school boards.
If there is a challenge with what you're seeing out there, don't you think that we can, compose curriculum that is age appropriate and that complies with the standards that are set by Bessie?
So the bill died with a 4-7 vote. It will not be brought back for this session. For the second year in a row, lawmakers upheld the rule allowing corporal punishment in public schools. State Representative Stephanie Hilferty renewed the push to prevent teachers from using physical punishments like spanking. Those in support say corporal punishment could open school districts up to lawsuits if a child is injured. But those against the bill believe it would take away a parent's right to decide how their child is reprimanded when they act up in school. The bill fell short by 2 votes. Current law gives school districts the ability to set their own policy on that issue. We're continuing to follow the Ronald Greene case, and the scrutiny State Police has now come under. Newly released notes of former Superintendent Kevin Reeve raises even more questions now. His journal shows he intended to discipline troopers after Ronald Greene's brutal arrest and death in 2019. However, more than a year went by before an investigation began. 11 pages from his journal were released Thursday. One entry written within days after the arrest reads, quote, "Realize there is a problem, must address immediately." A state House committee is still planning to charge Reeves with contempt if he doesn't turn over the full journals. 1,500 Louisiana inmates convicted by non-unanimous juries could get new trials. It's all up to a case set to be heard by the state Supreme Court. In 1997, Reginald Reddick was convicted of second-degree murder by a non-unanimous jury, a practice that was outlawed in Louisiana back in 2018. And in 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed it was unconstitutional. Tuesday, the state Supreme Court will begin hearing arguments about whether to make that ruling retroactive. Before those arguments begin, one lawmaker is pushing a bill he believes will help those convicted by these juries. But not everyone agrees. Shannon Hecht reports.
On Tuesday, the Louisiana Supreme Court will hear testimony on retroactivity for non-unanimous jury convictions being found unconstitutional. It is something the legislature has been pushing for years now. The first bill trying to address the issue made it out of committee, but not everyone is happy. HB 744 by Representative Randall Gaines would create a committee to oversee the 1,500 cases to see if a person should be allowed a chance at parole.
744 achieved the objective. Is not perfect. But it does give the best solution that we feel under challenging circumstances.
The committee would meet once a month to decide if there was a, quote, miscarriage of justice. Those who are in favor of retroactivity say people should get a new trial, not just parole. And the burden to prove some of the things the committee is looking for could be difficult for inmates.
None of these courts have ruled error patent based on a non-unanimous jury. When the professor wrote the book by Jim Crow's Last Stand, I don't think Jim Crow is dead yet. He's still standing.
Last year, the bill was shelved to wait for a court decision, but now some fear the opposite will happen.
For them to delay their decision or their decision be influenced by that.
The bill advanced with new amendments from the District Attorney Association attached.
Monday, the State Revenue Estimating Conference is set to meet. That's when lawmakers talk about how much money they have. It is anticipated they will announce yet another budget surplus. And many have ideas about how to spend it. Of course, the Louisiana Budget Project says there has been a lot of investment recently in infrastructure, but they want to see more money going directly to the people. The governor has already asked the legislature to use that money to increase the teacher pay raises even farther.
In putting money in housing. That also includes giving maybe direct payment to frontline workers and essential workers as a one-time bonus for their service during the global pandemic. It is funding and providing grant funding for opportunity youth planning boards that are across this state that each parish can use to make lives better for their young people.
Others see the surplus as a way to lower taxes and other expenses in other parts of the budget. But economists at the meeting will also talk about a looming fiscal cliff in the coming years. With the state's financial outlook in the black, lawmakers are considering rolling off the temporary half-cent sales tax early in hopes of fighting off a fiscal cliff. But some fear that could mean significant budget cuts. Shannon Hecht is back with the details.
The temporary 0.45 sales tax brings in $420 million a year. In 2025, it comes to an end, and with economists predicting the economic growth after the pandemic to slow then, a cliff is looming. Representative Tony Bacala wants to soften the blow and start making the legislature figure out how to behave without that money.
Unless you're willing to vote to extend the .45 forever, I think it's the wise thing to do is start adjusting ourselves to the loss of that revenue.
His plan is to cut the tax collection by 0.15% over 2 years starting in 2023. Some oppose the bill because they want a plan in place of how to replace the money.
Going over the cliff means cutting the state budget and cutting services that citizens need. That would be a choice of this legislature. They don't have to make that choice. They can replace that revenue with other revenue.
Some fear it's like what happened after Hurricane Katrina, which led to the deficit that created the tax. Bacala says it is totally different, and preparing now will prevent such negative repercussions.
And some believe this issue should not be dealt with until next year's fiscal legislative session. That's where lawmakers can create and find new revenue streams to replace the money that would be lost if the state phases out of this sales tax. Coming up, Congressman Steve Scalise travels from the nation's capital to the state's capital to talk about inflation, gas prices, and energy production. You'll hear what he had to say to Louisiana lawmakers next.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. The top man with the FBI in Washington visited New Orleans to come up with ways to fight the city's violent crime problem. FBI Director Christopher Wray joined sheriffs and chiefs of police from around southeast Louisiana. He says there is an uptick in gun violence and gang crime across the country. In New Orleans, Wray says there are multiple task forces that allow local, state, and federal agencies to work together. He added that he's sending more agents to help.
We have, within the FBI, reallocated resources to some extent among field offices, and New Orleans was one of the offices that grew in terms of agents and bodies.
Wray went on to say part of the problem is when the worst offenders keep getting back on the street. The FBI is trying to bring federal charges against more people, which can result in longer prison sentences. Also in town this week from Capitol Hill, Congressman Steve Scalise visited the state legislature. There he is. He talked about Risk Rating 2.0 that is jacking up insurance prices for Louisianans. That's not good. He is working with the rest of the delegation to tackle this issue. Scalise also has been taking lawmakers to the Gulf to see the oil and wind production he is hoping to increase.
That rig is probably over $12 billion of some of the best technology. Louisiana people work in these rigs, incredible safety standards, but they're producing about 130,000 barrels of oil a day for the country. And frankly, we talked about what we need to do more of that. You want to lower gas prices, you want to take Putin's leverage away, produce more American energy.
Scalise recently traveled with Congressman Clay Higgins to Lake Charles to follow up on the recovery from Hurricane Laura. This comes after his recent trip to Poland to meet with troops helping the Ukraine. On the topic of inflation, Congressman Garrett Graves is pushing the Biden administration to increase domestic oil production, especially here in Louisiana. Graves says producing more oil in the state will help ease the price at the pump and boost the local economy. He says this tactic will then strengthen relationships with other countries and eventually make the U.S. energy independent.
One of the benefits to Louisiana is as we produce more energy, we get more funds for flood control, for coastal restoration and hurricane protection. So it really is a win-win-win-win.
Graves says he is pushing for more domestic oil production across the nation. That pushback against the administration continues to grow in Washington. Bree Jackson has the latest.
From gas to groceries, Americans are feeling the financial pinch.
Food is high, the gas is high, the electric bills went up.
In an effort to tame record high inflation, the Federal Reserve is taking aggressive action, announcing its biggest rate hike in 22 years.
It is essential that we bring inflation down if we are to have a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all.
Increasing interest rates by 0.5 percentage point means things like auto loans, credit card debt, and mortgages will become more expensive. Republicans argue the economy is worse off because of Democratic policies.
Interest rates certainly influence the economy. We're having to raise interest rates because of Bidenomics.
President Biden blames Republican predecessors.
The bottom line is that for decades, the trickle-down economics has failed as income inequity grew to historic levels under the Republicans.
The president touting plans to reduce the deficit by $1.5 trillion, saying it's part of his administration's overall strategy aimed at combating inflation and helping the country recover from the pandemic.
It's time to grow the economy, but from the bottom up and the middle out.
As President Biden seeks to reassure families, the U.S. hit another grim milestone. More than 1 million Americans lost to COVID-19. This is the second rise in interest rates in only 2 months. The Fed chair says he expects more increases to come. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson for NBC News.
Switching gears now, Governor John Bel Edwards wants you to be prepared for the upcoming hurricane season. We'll have his words of warning next.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. The 2022 hurricane season is less than a month away. State officials want you to stay safe because it only takes one storm to change your life, as we well know. Governor John Bel Edwards is urging people to determine if they live in a hurricane evacuation zone and review insurance policies. People should also start thinking about how to prepare their home. State leaders want people to be mindful when it comes to generators. Make sure you know how to use them and when.
Have them inspected by a professional person. In addition to that, have the appropriate supplies, making sure people have carbon monoxide alarms, making people have the proper equipment, making sure they understand the right generators that they do. Those generators require oil changes, they require servicing. Now's the time to do that.
Information, make sure you have a plan, you are prepared, and your loved ones know your plan because it only takes one. Preparing is crucial, and many are still feeling the impacts of Hurricane Ida that hit last summer. Some parts of the state are still cleaning up debris. Jordan Lippincott reports.
Recovery efforts continue here in Barataria 9 months after Hurricane Ida.
As of a couple of days ago, there was a house clean across my property, which I couldn't even see the bayou front. And the grass was so tall around here, everything's just been a mess. But finally, now I can see waterway.
crews contracted through homeowner Tina Dempster are picking up the debris left behind by a house that had floated onto her property, along with debris from destroyed wharfs.
It just seems like it's taken forever. I know there's a lot of damage everywhere, but we do need to work on getting all these houses that are broken apart around us taken down.
Dempster lives in between two uninhabitable homes, which is a concern of hers as hurricane season nears.
Well, first off is trying to get all this debris picked up, and that's the big thing been on my mind, because once the winds start blowing, all this trash and everything around is just going to be midair. It's going to be hitting homes, vehicles, or whatever, you know.
Dempster is remaining optimistic and is taking the recovery process day by day.
But at least I have a home, and I know a lot of people don't have that, so I'm still grateful, very grateful for what I have. It just makes you know that all the money I put on fences, you know, you just have to make it to where the storm, you know, can't hurt you as much.
That was Jordan Lippincott reporting. Up next, we'll have a look at the week ahead on your local election headquarters. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Looking ahead to the coming week, tomorrow the Baton Rouge Press Club will host the president of the Louisiana Community and Technical College System to talk about the Mike Foster TOPS program. On Wednesday, the special committee investigating the death of Ronald Green will meet to discuss holding the former LSP superintendent in contempt. And as always, we will have full coverage of the waning legislative session. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.